In previous lessons, we have learned how to divide with a one-digit divisor, so something like 475 divided by 4, or something like that. Now in this lesson and the following lessons, we are expanding our knowledge of division to include dividing by two-digit divisors. So here in this lesson, we are working with dividing by a two-digit divisor where the quotient, or the answer, is only one digit. So we have a couple examples we're going to walk you through and explain the thought process. So example 1, what we're doing is we are doing 144 divided by 36. Now when you're dividing, your steps are the same as with a one-digit divisor. So we're going to begin by dividing, and we multiply, and then subtract, and then bring down. All right, so here, when you're dividing by a two-digit divisor, it's going to be helpful if you can kind of mentally determine the number roundabout which your answer is going to be. So we can kind of estimate. All right, so what we can do is we can take this number here and mentally round that to the nearest 10, which in this case would round up to 40. All right, and then what we can do is we try to figure out what do we multiply by 40 to get within the range of 144. Well, if you did 40 times 3, that would be 120. If you did 40 times 4, that would be 160. Notice that 144 is between those two numbers, between 3 and 4. So we can estimate our answer to be somewhere around 3 or 4. Okay, now your estimate will not be exact. It might sometimes fall, maybe one above or one below our estimate, but it should get us within the ballpark of the correct answer. So if we try the number 3, for example, so it's between 3 and 4. If we try the number 3, okay, what we do is we put a 3 up here. All right, that was step 1 of dividing. And then step 2 is multiply. We would multiply 3 times 36. So we're hoping that at this point you're pretty good with multiplying. But we can do 3 times 6 to get 18. Take the 8, carry the 1. 3 times 3 plus 1 is 10. That's 108. So if 3 is your answer, you do 3 times 36 to get 108. That was step 2. And then step 3 is subtract. So 144 minus 108. That would give you 36. All right, now the question is was 3 the correct number, or do we need to increase it or decrease it? Well, here, notice the remainder is the exact same as the divisor. If you find that to be the case, if it's the exact same or if this number is greater than the divisor, we need to increase this number up here. So 3 was not the number that we wanted. We're going to have to bump it up to a 4, and actually because the remainder is exactly the same as the divisor, we know that if we bump this number 3 up to 4, that's going to give us the exact answer. And that's going to be 4 with no remainder. We can verify that because if you put a 4 up here on the top, okay, that was step 1 of divide. We can then multiply 4 times 36. So 36 times 4, we would have 4 times 6 to get 24. Take the 4, carry the 2. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14. So that would give you 144 exactly. So for step 3, when you subtract, that's going to give you 0. So there is no remainder. So the answer is exactly 4. So 4 is your answer, and we could double check our work. We would do that by multiplying the 36 times the 4. So this 36 times 4, we've already said that was 144. But because that number is the exact same as this number over here, we know that we have done the problem correctly. Your solution would be 4. Let's try another example. Here we have example 2, and we're dividing 564 by 84. So again, it's going to be helpful if we try to estimate what this would be. That way we can figure out the general ballpark answer of the problem. All right, so what you can do is you can take the divisor and round it to the nearest 10. So 84 would round down to 80. All right, and then what we can do is we can then mentally figure out what would multiply with 80 to get within the range of 564? Well, if we did 80 times 7, 8 times 7 is 56, put a 0 at the end. So 80 times 7 would be 560. That's pretty close to 564. All right, so it's going to be pretty close to 7. If we did 80 times 8, that would be 640. So 64 with a 0. All right, so 564 would fall within that range. All right, well, it looks pretty close to 7. So let's start with a 7. All right, so we think it's going to be between 7 and 8. Again, it's not exact. It could be maybe 6 or 9, but it's going to fall pretty close to 7 or 8. So we can try 7 first because that was the number that gave us the closest result to the 564. It gave us 560. So if we put a 7 up here, we can try that out. So let's try a 7, and then we can do 84 times 7. That would give you 7 times 4, which is 28. So take the 8, carry the 2. 7 times 8 is 56, plus the 2 would be 58. So that would give us 588, which that number is too big. We cannot subtract 564 minus 588 because 588 is bigger than 564. So what that means when you see that is that the number we picked, the 7, is too big. We need to decrease it and go to 6 instead. So let's try a 6 up here instead. So that was step 1 of dividing. Step 2 is multiplying. We would do 84 times 6. So if you do that, 6 times 4 is 24. So we take the 4 from 24 and carry the 2. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 2 is 50. So that would be 504. Okay, so if you subtract 564 minus 504, this we can do. And if you do that, it's going to be 60. So 60 would be the remainder. And so our answer is 6 remainder of 60. And we know we had the correct number because this remainder is smaller than the divisor. If it's equal to or bigger than the divisor, that means we need to increase the number. But this is correct. We have 6 with the remainder of 60. And if we wanted to, we could verify this by double checking our work. What we would do is we would take the 6, multiply by 84, then you would add the remainder of 60. So we would do 6 times 84 plus 60. So 84 times 6, we can do that. 84 times 6 would give you 24, carry the 2, be 48 plus 2, which is 50. That would be 504. And then plus 60, that would give you 564. So because that number is the exact same as the dividend, this number right here, that means we do have the correct solution. Okay, let's try another example. Here we have example 3, where we are dividing 613 by 92. So to do this, it's going to be helpful if you can estimate what your number is going to be. So to do that, we can round the 92, round that to the nearest 10. So that would round to the number 90. And then we can check and see what number can we multiply 90 by to get close to 613. Well, if we do 90 times 6, okay, 9 times 6 is 54, then put a 0 at the end, that would be 540. Okay, that's pretty close. If we did 90 times 7, that would be 630. Right, 9 times 7 is 63, put a 0 at the end, 630. Well, 613 falls within that range of 540 and 630, so that means that your answer is probably going to be maybe around 6 or 7. So again, that's an estimate. It doesn't have to be 6 or 7. It could be maybe 5 or 8, but that's going to get us pretty close to the actual answer. And if nothing else, it gives us a starting point on which number we can experiment with. So if we start with the 6, okay, let's put a 6 up here. Let's see what happens. So if we put a 6 up here, that was step 1 of dividing. Step 2 would be multiplying 92 times 6. So if we do that, we would do 2 times 6 to get 12. We'll take the 2, carry the 1. And then 6 times 9 is 54, plus the 1 is 55. So what we have is 552. So let's see if this works. So if we subtract 3 minus 2, that would give us 1. 1 minus 5 does not work. We need to borrow from the 6. That becomes a 5. And then the one we borrow goes here. We now have 11 minus 5, which is 6. And then 5 minus 5 is 0. So it's just 61. And that works because 61 is less than the divisor. So 6 would be your answer, and the 61 is your remainder. So your solution would be 6 with a remainder of 61. If the remainder is bigger than the divisor, or equal to, we would have to bump the number 6 up to a 7. Alright, but here this works. We have 6 with a remainder of 61. And again, we can double check our answer by multiplying the 92 times the 6, and then adding the 61. So we can check by doing 92 times 6, and then add that with 61. So let's try that quick. 92 times 6. We already did that up here, right? 552. So that'd be 552 plus 61. So if you add those together, we'll do it over here. 2 plus 1 is 3. 5 plus 6 is 11. So take the 1, carry the other 1. 1 plus 5 is 6. That gives you 613, which is the same number as the dividend. So therefore, we do have the correct solution. Let's take a look at one more example. Here, we are dividing 229 by 45. So for this one, again, it's going to be helpful if we can estimate to get a starting point for our answer. So what we can do is we can round the number 45. We can round it up to 50. All right, which by the way, 45 is right in the middle of 40 and 50. So this one could actually go either way as far as your rounding for estimating. We'll round it up to a 50. All right, and then what we can do from here is we can figure out what would multiply with 50 to get us close to the number 229. Well, if we do 50 times 4, that would be 200. 50 times 5 would be 250. So 229 does fall within that range between 200 and 250. So our estimate would be somewhere between 4 and 5. All right, so we're thinking it's going to be somewhere around 4 or 5. We're not 100%, but it's at least gives us a starting point for the problem. So if we start with 4 up here, we can try that out. We would do, so that was step 1, that was divide. Next we can do multiplication, 4 times 45. So we would have 45 times 4, and then 4 times 5 is 20. So take the 0, carry the 2. 4 times 4 is 16, plus the 2 would be 18. So that would give you 180. Okay, so if you subtract that, 9 minus 0 is 9, and then 22 minus 18 is 4. That gives you 49. So notice that this would be the remainder, but it's bigger than the divisor. So because it's bigger, that means we have the wrong number up here. Your answer is not going to be 4. But you have to bump it up to the next number. And you can actually probably do this in your head if you know what you're doing. Because if we bump this up to a 5, okay, bump that up to a 5, that means we fit one more 45 in the 229. So if 49 is the remainder, we took one more set of 45s. If we subtract that, that's going to give you 4. All right, so we would have 5 with a remainder of 4. Now, if you can't do that in your head, we do know that we need to bump the 4 up to a 5. We can go back through the process of division. So if we put a 5 up here, we would now do 5 times 45 for step 2. So if you do it this way, 45 times 5, we would have 5 times 5 to get 25. So take the 5, carry the 2. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 2 is 22. So we have 225 right here. Step 3 is subtract. So when you subtract these, we get 4. So 4 is the remainder. That is less than 45, so that works. So your answer would be 5 with a remainder of 4. And we could double check our work where we would do 45 times 5, and then we could add the remainder of 4. So 45 times 5, we already got that to be 225 up here. then add 4, that gives you 229. So because this number is the same as 229 over here, that means we do have the correct solution. So this is the process of long division with dividing by a 2-digit divisor, and when there's only 1 digit for the solution. Now, in the next lessons, we're going to expand this, and we're going to add another digit over here. So now we'd have to repeat the process again. So if you had that, for example, when you have the 4 from subtracting, all we do is bring down the 6 and repeat the process again. All right, so if you can do this, you can do the next lessons, because again, we're just doing the same thing, but we are doing it multiple times with more digits in the dividend. And this concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.